The Great Hall of Caravel Station was built to make visitors feel small, its ceiling curved like the inside of a planet's shell, glowing with slow-moving light patterns that changed color based on rank and status. Every step echoed. Every breath felt judged. It was a place designed to remind outsiders that they were temporary, fragile, and watched. Captain Elias Rourke walked through it anyway. He was human, which already made him unusual here. He wore a formal uniform that had been repaired too many times, the fabric slightly faded at the edges. His posture was straight, but not stiff. His face showed calm, though his body carried a tired weight that no ceremony could hide. 2 alien guards escorted him. They were tall, armored, and perfectly synchronized, their movements smooth and practiced. They did not touch him. They did not need to. Everyone in the hall knew that a single wrong move from a human would end things quickly. Rows of alien nobles watched in silence. Some were tall and thin, others wide and layered with plated skin. A few had eyes. Some had too many. Some none at all. Most had already decided what they thought of humanity. Small, weak, temporary. This meeting was a formality, they believed. Humanity had expanded too fast, stumbled into galactic politics too soon, and now stood before the Queen of the Aurelian Dominion to be judged. Many expected demands. Some expected punishment. A few expected nothing at all because they did not believe humans would matter in the long run. At the far end of the hall, elevated above everyone else, sat the alien queen. She was ancient by any measure. Her form was elegant and terrifying at the same time, long and symmetrical, with a crown of natural crystal growing from her head like frozen fire. Her eyes were dark, reflective, and sharp enough to make even her own advisors uncomfortable. She had ruled for longer than human civilization had recorded history. She watched Elias approach. When he stopped at the marked distance, he did not kneel. He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect without surrender. A murmur rippled through the court. One of the advisors leaned toward the queen, whispering urgently. The queen lifted a single hand. Silence returned instantly. "Human emissary," she said, her voice resonating through the hall without effort. "You stand before the Aurelian throne. State your purpose." Elias raised his head. His voice was steady, simple, and clear. "I come to speak for humanity. We request peaceful recognition, fair borders, and the chance to exist without threat."
A few nobles made quiet sounds of amusement.
Others exchanged glances. The queen studied him carefully, her gaze not resting on his face alone, but on his breathing, his balance, the small movements of pain he tried not to show. "You are injured," she said. "Yes," Elias replied. "You were aware that presenting weakness before this court carries consequences? Yes? And you came anyway?" "Yes." That earned a pause. The queen leaned forward slightly. "Explain." Elias took a slow breath. "Because hiding what we are has never helped us survive." That answer drew more attention than he expected. The queen's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in curiosity. As the formal exchange continued, something small went wrong. The fabric near Elias's side pulled when he shifted his weight. The repair seam, old and strained, finally gave way. It was not dramatic. There was no loud tear, just a quiet sound, barely noticeable. But it was enough. The uniform parted slightly, revealing skin beneath, pale, human skin, marked by an old wound. The scar was long and uneven, crossing his side at an angle that made no sense to anyone trained in galactic medicine. It was not smooth or clean. It looked wrong. The queen saw it. She froze, not metaphorically. Truly froze. Her body went still, her expression locked, her eyes fixed on the exposed scar as if the rest of the universe had disappeared. The light patterns in the hall flickered. Advisors noticed. Guards shifted. Whispers began, and died as everyone realized something was very wrong. The queen did not speak. Then more. Then Elias noticed the silence and followed her gaze. He glanced down, saw the torn fabric, and understood. Slowly, carefully, he reached to close the uniform. But the queen's voice cut through the air. "Do not move." He stopped. She descended from the throne. No one in the court had seen that happen in generations. Advisors recoiled. Guards stiffened. The queen moved closer, each step measured, her attention never leaving the scar. "Expose it," she said quietly. Elias hesitated. This was not in any protocol, but he had come to represent humanity honestly, and that meant accepting moments like this. He pulled the fabric aside. The scar was fully visible now. Old, healed, but unmistakable. The queen inhaled sharply. Several scholars rushed forward, activating holographic displays, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief. Symbols appeared in the air, ancient diagrams and restricted records flashing one after another. "That is impossible," one whispered. "That pattern was classified as extinct," said another. The queen raised a hand again. Silence returned. She stood very close to Elias now. Close enough that he could feel the cold presence of her authority pressing against him. "How are you alive?" she asked. Elias met her gaze. "Because it didn't kill me." That was not the answer she expected. "That wound," she said slowly, "matches injuries recorded only once in our history. Sustained by a species that challenged the early Dominion." Elias frowned slightly. "I don't know anything about that. I got this during a failed first contact mission, long before we had proper allies." Her eyes sharpened. "You survived without regeneration chambers. Without cellular reweaving. Without Dominion intervention." "Yes. How long did it take to heal?" Elias thought. "Months. Maybe longer." I stopped counting. A wave of unease spread through the hall. Among the Aurelian people, such a wound would have meant death within hours. "And you continued serving afterward," the queen said. "Yes." "You continued to place yourself in danger." "Yes." The queen straightened slowly. Something had changed in her posture. Not fear, not anger. "Calculation. Cover it," she said. Elias did so. She turned to the court. "Clear the hall!" Shock rippled through the nobles. Protests began immediately. "This audience is concluded," the queen said, her voice cutting through all resistance. "Leave us." One by one, the hall emptied. Guards sealed the doors. Only Elias and the queen remained, surrounded by fading light and ancient silence. "You are not what your reports described," she said. Elias allowed himself a small breath of relief. "We get that a lot." She studied him again, this time not as a ruler judging a subject, but as something closer to an equal measuring an unknown force. "Humans are listed as biologically fragile," she continued. "Short-lived, emotion-driven, prone to collapse." He nodded. "We are. Yet you endure damage that erased stronger species." "Yes. Why?" Elias thought before answering. "Because we don't have a choice." The queen tilted her head. "Explain." "We've never lived in a safe universe," he said. "Everything we built assumed failure was possible. That tomorrow wasn't guaranteed, so when something breaks, we fix it. When someone falls, we carry them. And when we get hurt," he gestured vaguely, "we learn how to live with it." The queen was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "That wound should not exist, and yet it stands before me." She turned back toward her throne, but did not ascend it. "This audience was meant to decide your value," she said. "Instead, it has reminded us of something we chose to forget." Elias watched her carefully, Is that bad for us? Her eyes met his. That, she said, depends on how many of you are like this. Elias answered honestly.
Most of us are scarred in some way. You just happen to see one.
The Queen's fingers tightened slightly. Then the galaxy must rethink its assumptions, she said quietly. The lights dimmed further, and far away, deep within the station, ancient systems stirred. Archives unopened for centuries responding to a truth, walking on two human legs. Elias stood alone in the vast hall, uniform repaired but history torn open, unaware that his survival had just changed how an empire would look at humanity forever. The doors of the great hall closed with a deep sound that echoed like a warning. Silence followed, heavy and alive. The Queen stood near her throne, but she did not sit. Elias Rourke remained where he was, hands relaxed at his sides, aware that every movement still mattered. The Queen turned her gaze away from him for a moment and looked upward. The glowing patterns on the ceiling shifted, responding to her presence. Symbols appeared in the air, old and complex, rotating slowly. These records were sealed before your species discovered fire, she said calmly. Elias did not interrupt. They tell of a time when the Dominion was young, she continued, when we believed strength meant perfection, when injury was failure, and survival without purity was unthinkable. She gestured, and an image formed between them. It showed a tall, unfamiliar species, broad-shouldered, dense in structure, clearly built for endurance. The image flickered, damaged by age. They were called the Vor, the Queen said. They resisted us, not with greater weapons, but with refusal. They survived battles they should not have. They continued after losses that would have ended others. Elias studied the image. What happened to them? The Queen's expression hardened slightly. We erased them. Or so we believed. The image shifted. Diagrams appeared, injury patterns, damage points, survival projections. One diagram highlighted a wound that looked disturbingly familiar. Elias felt a quiet chill. That's, close. Yes, the Queen said. Too close. She looked at him again. Your wound matches these records within an unacceptable margin. Elias exhaled slowly. With respect, Your Majesty, humans didn't come from anywhere but Earth. We've checked. I do not suggest origin, she replied. I suggest inheritance. That word hung in the air. Elias frowned. We don't have records of ancient galactic ancestors. We barely have records of ourselves. The Queen moved closer again, her voice lower now. Tell me about the moment you received the wound. He hesitated, then nodded. It was our first attempt at peaceful contact outside our early expansion zone. The species we met panicked, weapons fired, one of their defense systems overloaded. I was too close. You should have died, she said. Yes, but you did not. No. How? Elias thought back. Pain. Blood. Fear. The memory was old but sharp. I refused to stop moving, he said simply. I kept pressure on it. My team dragged me out. We didn't have advanced medical tech back then, just basic tools and stubborn people. The Queen listened closely. Doctors told me later I'd never fully recover, Elias continued. They were wrong, mostly. And yet you still serve? She said. Yes. Why? He looked at her directly, because someone has to stand up and say we're still here. That answer stayed with her. She turned away and walked slowly across the hall. As she moved, the symbols around her changed again, showing star systems, timelines, wars long ended. The Vor were not conquered in the way history teaches, she said. They were exhausted, broken slowly, not by force alone, but by isolation. We labeled them unstable. Dangerous. Then we stopped listening. Elias felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest. That sounds familiar. The Queen stopped walking. You fear the same fate? She said. Yes, Elias replied honestly. She faced him. And yet you walked into this hall wounded, knowing it could be used against you? Yes. Why? Because pretending we're invincible would be a lie, he said, and lies don't last. The Queen studied him in silence again. This time, there was no shock in her eyes. Only thought. You humans record failure openly, she said. You allow it to be seen. Yes. Among us, scars are hidden. Removed. Corrected. Elias shrugged slightly. We keep ours. They remind us what didn't work. The Queen let out a slow breath. That philosophy nearly ended us once. She raised her hand, and the symbols vanished. The hall dimmed further. Human emissary, she said, her voice more formal again. Your presence has activated restricted protocols. You will remain on Catavel Station under protection until a decision is made. Elias nodded. Understood. You will not be harmed, she added. Not unless you give cause. That's fair. She turned toward the exit. Before leaving, she paused. One more question, she said without looking back. If your species learned tomorrow that the galaxy feared you, what would you do? Elias considered the question carefully. We'd try to prove we're worth trusting, he said, and prepare for the chance that it won't matter. The Queen did not respond. She left the hall, the door sealing behind her. Elias was escorted to a private chamber, overlooking the station's inner void. The room was quiet, clean, and clearly designed for observation as much as comfort. He sat down slowly, feeling the familiar ache along his side. He wondered how many humans across the stars carried similar stories, not the same scars, but the same choices. To keep going, to stand up again. Hours passed, then days. Whispers spread through the station. Scholars requested access to human medical data. Military advisors argued in closed chambers. Ancient archives were opened, their contents spreading like cracks through carefully polished history. The Queen stood alone in the archive chamber, surrounded by ghosts of decisions long buried. Images of the Vor flickered again and again, each one ending the same way. Survival followed by silence. They did not break, she said softly to herself. They were ignored. A thought formed that unsettled her more than any weapon ever had. Humans were not demanding dominance. They were asking to exist. That made them unpredictable. Back in his chamber, Elias received a message. No words, just a request to return to the hall. When he arrived, the space felt different, smaller, heavier. The Queen stood waiting, no advisors this time. You have changed the direction of this court, she said. I didn't mean to, Elias replied. I know, she said. That concerns me. She walked around him slowly. If humanity is allowed to grow freely, it will disrupt balance. If it is restrained, it may resist. Probably, Elias said. And if it is ignored, she continued, it may endure until it cannot be ignored. Yes. The Queen stopped in front of him. Tell your people this, she said. The galaxy does not fear your strength. It fears your survival. Elias nodded. I'll pass that on. She straightened. The Dominion will not act against humanity. Not yet. He looked up. Yet? Understanding takes time, she said. And fear takes longer. As Elias was escorted away once more, the Queen remained behind, staring at the place where he had stood. For the first time in centuries, she wondered whether the greatest threat to the galaxy was not a weapon, but a species that refused to disappear. And somewhere deep in the station's systems, ancient warning markers reactivated. Not alarms of attack, but reminders of a past mistake returning, quietly, on human feet. The station changed after that. It was not something that could be measured easily. No alarms sounded, no laws were announced, yet the air inside Caravel Station felt different, as if the walls themselves were listening more closely than before. Elias Rourke noticed it first in the way people looked at him. Before, most aliens had ignored him or studied him with distant curiosity, like a weak animal that had wandered somewhere it did not belong. Now their eyes followed him longer. Not with hatred, not with fear exactly, but with uncertainty. Guards still escorted him, but their movements were less tense. Scholars passed by and paused, clearly wanting to ask questions they were not yet allowed to voice. He remained calm. That was something he had learned long ago. When others were unsure, calm made them listen. The Queen did not summon him again right away. Instead, the station filled with quiet activity. Archive doors opened. Data streams long sealed were accessed. Councils met in private chambers where voices rose and fell in careful arguments. The Dominion was thinking. That alone was dangerous. In a high chamber overlooking the starfield, the Queen stood with 3 of her oldest advisors. They were beings who had survived centuries of rule, change, and correction. Each one carried authority shaped by long memory. "The records confirm it," one advisor said. "Human biology should not allow that level of survival. Their healing process is inefficient." "Crude, yet effective," another replied. "Accidentally effective," the first insisted. The Queen said nothing. Her gaze remained fixed on the stars beyond the transparent wall. "The concern," the third advisor said carefully, "is not what they are now. It is what they become under pressure." That drew the Queen's attention. "Explain," she said. "They evolve socially faster than genetically," the advisor continued. "They share failure. They remember pain. Their unity increases when threatened." "Many species do that," the Queen replied. "Yes," the advisor agreed. "Briefly. Humans do it repeatedly." Silence followed. "They are not strong alone," the first advisor said. "They require cooperation, which means they create it," the Queen replied. The advisor did not answer. Elsewhere on the station, Elias sat with a small group of Dominion scholars. The meeting was unofficial. No titles. No ceremony. "Just questions. How many humans have survived similar injuries?" one scholar asked. Elias thought. "More than you'd expect. Fewer than we'd like." "Do you celebrate such survival?" another asked. "We don't celebrate the injury," he said. "We respect the person who lived through it." "Why?" "Because they carry knowledge," Elias replied, "about what breaks us and what doesn't." The scholars exchanged glances. That answer unsettled them. "Would you hide such wounds if asked?" one asked. Elias shook his head. "No, that would erase the lesson." The session ended quietly, but the questions spread. Reports began to circulate through the Dominion networks, carefully worded, neutral in tone. But beneath the language was a growing realization. Humans did not avoid damage. They planned for it. The Queen read the reports alone. One phrase repeated often enough to draw her focus: refusal to collapse. She remembered the Vor, not as the broken images in the archives, but as they had been described before history was corrected. Unstable, excessive, difficult to govern, always recovering when expected to fail. She had accepted those descriptions once. Now she wondered who had written them. Another summons came for Elias, this time not to the Great Hall, but to a smaller chamber. The space was round, softly lit, without the heavy weight of authority. The Queen stood alone inside. You have been observed, she said as he entered. I assumed so, Elias replied. You speak carefully, she continued, but not defensively. We're used to being misunderstood, he said. Defensive language just makes it worse. The Queen considered that. Your people share stories of failure openly, she said. Battles lost, missions failed. Leaders mistaken. Yes. In the Dominion, such records are erased to preserve confidence. And does it? Elias asked gently. She did not answer right away. Confidence, she said finally, is fragile. Yes, Elias agreed. That's why we don't build on it alone. What do you build on? Adaptation, he said, and trust. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. Trust requires risk. Yes, you are asking the galaxy to risk believing you are not a threat. We are, Elias said. And we're accepting the risk that you won't. She turned away, thinking. You survived without certainty, she said quietly. We always have. The Queen faced him again. If the Dominion restricts human expansion, what will your people do? Elias answered honestly. We'll find a way to live within it, and we'll remember who closed the doors. And if the Dominion offers alliance, we'll take it seriously, he said. But we won't give up who we are to keep it. That answer lingered between them. Across the station, something else was happening. Younger species began to notice the shift. Traders whispered, minor delegates asked questions. The idea spread slowly, like gravity. The Dominion was not certain anymore, and uncertainty created space. In quiet corners, species long dismissed began re-examining their own histories, old injuries, old losses, stories of survival that had been edited out. Humanity had not arrived as conquerors. They had arrived as a mirror. The Queen received a final report late in the cycle. It summarized everything in one simple line. Humans endure instability without losing cohesion. She closed the report and stood still for a long time. Then she made a decision. Elias was summoned one last time that cycle. When he entered the chamber, the Queen did not speak immediately. She activated a projection instead. It showed the Vor again, not their defeat, their early days. Cooperation, rebuilding after damage, learning from failure. These records were hidden because they challenged the idea of perfect control, she said. Elias watched quietly. The Dominion believed stability meant removing anything unpredictable, she continued. That belief nearly destroyed us. She turned to him. Humanity represents unpredictability without chaos. Elias raised an eyebrow slightly. We do our best. A faint, unexpected shift crossed the Queen's expression. Not a smile, but something close. The Dominion will not suppress humanity, she said, nor will it rush to embrace it. That sounds fair, Elias replied. But understand this, she added. Your survival changes how the galaxy thinks. That cannot be undone. Elias nodded. We're not trying to undo anything. Just move forward. She studied him one last time. Your wound was a warning, she said. Not of danger, of memory. Elias placed a hand lightly over his side. We remember so we don't repeat things. The Queen inclined her head slightly, a gesture few ever received. As Elias left the chamber, the station lights shifted once more, responding to a future no longer certain, but no longer closed. Across the stars, humanity remained small, scarred, and persistent. And for the first time in a very long time, the galaxy began to understand that survival itself could be a form of strength.